Welcome to the new Citroen E-C4X Electric, a car which faces the Volkswagen ID.3, the MG4 and other electric models just like those. But this one has a unique feature that may just make it better than all of them. Now, before we talk about that unique feature, it's worth us looking at the design of this car because, like that feature, it's a unique thing. Firstly, because it takes the form of a saloon on stilts rather than a hatchback on stilts or a small SUV. Everyone else is doing that, but Citroen has gone different and extended what was a hatchback body shape from the E-C4 and made a much longer, swoopier design. Now, normally that means you concede some boot space, but in this car, it's bigger. It's much, much bigger actually, and we'll talk about it in a moment. So you get this swoopier roofline here. The wheelbase is the same, but crucially, it makes the car better and slipperier through the air. So you get 5 more miles than you do in the E-C4, which is more like a hatchback on stilts. So that gives it 222 miles of claimed range, which isn't anywhere near the class's best. The MG4 leaves it standing quite far behind, but it's pretty competitive. And because it can charge with a 100 kilowatt rapid charger, you can plug it in and go from 0 to 80% in 30 minutes. Or they say you can get 59 miles in about 10 minutes. So what, the amount of time it takes to get a cup of coffee. So it's pretty competitive. But we want to see how it handles British roads, and that's where that one feature really comes into its own. Now, first things first, this is a top of the range model. It's a Shine Plus E-C4X, and that means it's a really nice place to be. The interior is so comfortable. This seat, the seating position, and everything I touch feels really high grade and quite high end actually, and it leaves models like that ID.3 from Volkswagen looking a bit awkward and cluttered on the interior. The MG4, we know, has a great interior, and I think this is right up there with it in terms of feel, fit, and finish. But then it adds a few unique features that are quite typically Citroen. I mean, the steering wheel for starters is slightly square, and you've got these unique digital displays, but it just feels, well, quite French actually, and I like that. It feels somewhat different to its rivals. It also steers and goes down a road really nicely. Now, we're driving on pretty nice Herefordshire country roads, but there are some potholes and bumps, all the usual stuff, and it's soaking them all up completely. And yet, when I turn the steering wheel, it doesn't feel too squidgy and too overly soft. Just cruising along on this road here, it just steers and turns, and even when I apply the brakes, get on the power, everything feels so smooth and so refined. This is the first car to come from Citroen to be launched exclusively in all-electric form. So that means you get a 50 kilowatt hour battery underneath you in the car's floor, and it will do 136 horsepower at the motor, which means you can sprint from 0 to 62 miles per hour in 10 seconds. Now that sounds slow, it's not particularly quick, but it does suit the car's character very well indeed, because this thing is just so smooth to drive. The way it steers, even the steering weighting, the way that the accelerator then encourages the motor to accelerate you forward, it's just, everything is so smooth and so polished, and it just feels very refined as a package. And I can demonstrate that here. If I just let the traffic ahead get away from me, and then I put my foot down, foot to the floor, it's such a linear delivery of power that you barely know you're accelerating, but then I look down at the speedo and I'm already at the national speed limit. So it's quick enough, and with 240 newton meters of torque, it has good rolling acceleration, but it doesn't feel dramatic in any way, but it suits the car. Other cars you might complain and say you wanted a bit more excitement, but this is a Citroen and it wants to be comfortable and refined. Now, fans of Citroen will probably be familiar with its hydraulic suspension past. It used to make these amazing, super comfortable cloud-like cars, which use complicated technology to basically smooth out rough roads. It doesn't use that kind of stuff these days for various reasons. We've got a more conventional coil and damper setup on its cars, but it does still have one unique feature, the one I mentioned earlier, that elevates it above its class rivals and makes it feel like a really high-end car, and that is hydraulic bump stop technology. Basically, that means when you get to the end of your suspension's capabilities, if I hit a pothole or I go over a deep rut or camber, and it pushes the suspension right up so it has no more ability to absorb the bump or the impact, well then those hydraulic bump stops come into action, and they just cushion that final edge of the suspension and the spring. So it means you don't get any harshness, and I've tested it. It really is very good. If I just drive over Cat's Eyes here, the ride in general is actually very nice, and you can't really get much vibration through the car. But then if I seek out a pothole, like this one here, it just smooths it out completely. Another one here, we're not short of them in Britain, are we? It just smooths out everything and makes the road feel much flatter and much smoother than it is. So from a ride comfort perspective, I think this is the best car I've driven in this class. It's really very good. Now, normally that kind of focus does mean that the car will be a bit roly-poly around bends. And yeah, okay, if I go into this corner here, It definitely leans a bit. It doesn't feel sporty. The MG4 feels very sporty, so much so that you might have seen we drove it on track in our review earlier this year. But actually this car, well, it does roll around a bit more. It doesn't feel anywhere near as eager to excite, and that obviously matches that smooth delivery of power. But it still handles well. There's loads of grip. The steering is nice. It doesn't give you any feel through the actual helm itself, but that doesn't matter. It's not trying to. It just feels nicely weighted, and the front end reacts keen enough. So it all just feels very cohesive as a package. And that all matches really nicely to the way this interior makes you feel. Firstly, you're nicely cocooned in the surroundings. I do like my seats, admittedly, really quite low, and I know other people prefer to sit higher, but the good thing in this car is that you can have it either very low, like I have it now, where I feel lovely and engulfed by this interior, or you can raise it right back up. But either way, the cabin just points at the driver. You've got your screens and everything just feels like it's wrapping around you, even the way the dash joins to the door. It just feels very, well, cozy, very comfortable. And that's echoed by the seats as well. These seats are extremely comfortable. They're nice and supportive, got really good lumbar support, good side support as well. Not much in the way of actual cornering support. If you do carry speed through the bends, you are a bit loose in the seat, but it's perfect for this car. Again, everything just feels well matched. It's not by mistake, of course, but Citroen has done a very good job in making this thing feel different and like it's just happy in its own skin. So yeah, all right, maybe it is a little bit boring to drive, but I think that's probably what this car wants and needs to be. And actually, look, we're coming up to a roundabout now, so I can just see if I can carry some speed in to show you that it isn't too bad at all round bends. Here we go, some cornering speed. Yeah, it went round the corner. There was a bit of body roll. I wasn't particularly excited by it, but it managed it fine. It's technically very capable, even if there's not much emotion to it. You do get drive modes as well. You've got 3 main modes. You've got a normal, and then you've got an eco, which just slows the accelerator down. Again, I don't think you really need it. And then there is a sport mode, but it makes such a small difference to the way the accelerator reacts. I mean, it just sharpens it up only a tiny amount. That, again, you just leave it at normal. This car feels completely at home in its normal setting. And it has a really good sound system as well. Of course, this is the top grade model, so it's got an excellent speaker set up front, and you even get a subwoofer behind me as well. So it sounds really powerful, and I can demonstrate that. Hello Citroen, play Virgin Radio. When it comes to the technology fitted to this top grade model, there is a lot to talk about. Basically, you get 2 digital screens, commonplace I know, but this infotainment screen in the middle is pretty quick to respond, and the graphics are quite nice, but I do think most of us are going to plug in and use Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. But it's nice to know that it actually does work and respond, and crucially, you've got heater controls and controls for your vents, etc., and your heated seats and your heated steering wheel, all as buttons down here, which is very helpful indeed. And you also get more buttons on the steering wheel to do things like your cruise control, your adaptive cruise control, or control your media, or that voice control system if you don't want to say hello Citroen. Then you've got an instrument cluster ahead of you, which is all digital. Not the biggest, but they've kind of made it work. It sort of fits into the dash design nice and snug, and it's full of information, crisp and clear. I have no complaints whatsoever for it. Actually, elsewhere, you get given so much extra space and so many features that you don't in other cars. Sometimes they try and just leave a lot of open space in the middle, but because Citroen's tried to really cocoon you in this cabin, you have little segments that kind of wrap around your body. So I've got a shelf up here, which in this top grade model has wireless phone charging. Then I've got 2 USB ports here. I've got more space down here with a grip pad on it, so you could throw another phone in there or whatever you want. Then you can lift it out. There's extra space under there. Good cubby holes in the doors. They hold a keep cup well. 2 cup holders down here as well. And then of course you've got this storage space under this armrest as well. And I haven't even spoken about the most interesting feature when it comes to the cabin up front, and that is this thing here. If you press above the glove box here, you'll find an iPad or similar. And then if you press this up here, when it's fitted with Citroen's specific case here, you can actually fold this down and clip on your iPad. And now in the back, despite this car being longer than the E-C4 hatchback, it's not longer in the wheelbase, so that means you get the same amount of space in the rear, and it's still pretty good actually, to be fair. Lots and lots of knee room. I can tuck my toes under here with my seat set how I like it. So it's a spacious thing when it comes to leg and torso space, but actually headroom is a little bit snug. I mean, my head just grazes the edge here, and above me there's not that much room, but it's enough I think for a car of this size. It's a family car potentially with kids in the back rather than adults. That being said, there is a decent amount of room, even in the middle seat. It's quite a generous middle seat actually, and you get quite a lot in the back as well. You've got 2 USB ports down here, you've got your own vent controls as well, and you've even got reading lights above you here, so it's a nice place to be. And with this car being a high grade model, you've got part leather and part Alcantara trim, so it feels pretty swish. And of course, if it's just 2 of you in the back, you do also get a couple more cup holders as well, or an armrest. So because this car has a longer back end, the boot is very generous indeed. Most cars in this class get about 380 litres of space, which is the same actually for what this car has in hatchback form. But with this extended rear end on the E-C4X, you actually get 510 litres of space. If that doesn't mean anything to you, just know that it would swallow, I reckon, 2 of our family suitcases. Most hatchbacks or most cars in this class will take 1 and then you get a bit of space around the edge. This looks like it could swallow 1 here and 1 further under there as well, because it's just got so much room, and there's space under the boot floor as well. You can throw your charge cables under there, and our car actually comes with that optional subwoofer I mentioned earlier, so there's still space in there for hiding things as well. And then it's just got a really wide section over here, so it's great for boot space. But because this is a saloon-shaped car rather than a hatchback or an SUV-shaped car, it does mean your opening is only this wide. So if, like me, for example, you occasionally throw a bicycle in the back of your car, well, you're going to struggle with this. I think it might be possible, but it would be quite difficult. And I think a lot of people would much prefer to have that larger tailgate at the back. So that's good, but maybe not perfect for the UK market. I think other markets where saloons still sell very well, this car is probably going to go down a treat. But in Britain, where we do like having that bigger boot and that slightly more SUV stature, I don't know how this is going to do, but it is a very good car. I mean, I am really, really impressed with the way it goes down a road. And given that it starts from under 32k in basic form, and even here with all this kit on it and in top grade trim, it's barely over 36k. It feels like an excellent value machine. All right, yes, the MG4 is the elephant in the room. It undercuts it by a massive margin, but it undercuts everything by a massive margin. If you compare this to the more mainstream manufacturers that most buyers still tend to go for, including Volkswagen, well, this thing looks like a really good value product indeed. I'm a big fan of it, as you can probably tell. But what do you think? Let us know in the comments below. Is this, with its saloon body shape, going to be able to lure buyers away from those jacked up hatchbacks or small SUVs? Let us know. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, click that like button, and hopefully we will see you soon for many more videos like this, and of course, many fast ones at Rockingham.